We're going to discuss how a country can go bankrupt and what we can learn from it.
Yes, and for that, we're already connected with Chief Economist at Bank Central Asia, Pak David Sumual. Good morning, Pak David.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
We're very good.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, and ready to really absorb, because this has been, this has been a topic that's been an ongoing discussion for weeks and months now, actually. And so first, straight away, can you please explain to us a little bit about sovereign default or bankruptcy and the factors that could drive a country to default?
Okay, thank you. Actually, in terms of the definition, the bankruptcy is just like an individual or a company actually. A country can declare bankrupt if it can repay its obligations to the creditors. Basically, it's very simple definition. Yeah, a country when bankrupt when it has no way to default on its debts. Yeah, especially external debts. So if they have debts denominated in hard currencies and they cannot repay it, we can declare it, or the country can declare bankruptcy.
Before we talk about what are some of the signs in regards to this situation, we do know that I believe it was back in 2019 when Sri Lanka had chosen to focus more on its domestic as opposed to exporting their local items. This has actually put them in a tough position because not only has it increased their foreign debt, but it's actually dried up their reserves as well. Can you explain a little bit how Sri Lanka got into this situation to begin with?
It's very difficult situations actually. They are already in a dire situation since 2010s, most probably. Yeah. So there are some crucial economic issues. First, actually, they're already in a series of IMF bailouts. I counted maybe nearly 20s of IMF bailouts already. And they have also, there is an impact also from the tax cuts in 2019.
Okay.
Because the politicians, especially the government, they must fulfill their campaign promises to cut the tax, and they cut it very drastically. So they have a kind of fiscal side of a country's bankruptcy, so lower revenue due to the tax rate cuts. And it sent a negative shocks actually to the country. And they have also problem in the organic farming. So they need to increase the domestic fertilizers, and previously they imported much of their fertilizer abroad, and it results to the drop of the farming production. So about 80%, according to some reports, their rice productions and also other agriculture productions dropped so much in the past 2-3 years. And also tourism sector, they have a problem because one of the biggest forex reserve actually coming from the tourism sectors, and they have bombings, terrorism previously, and also worsened by the pandemic. And lastly, perhaps they also have some big, what we call it, white elephant projects, very prestigious projects, but they don't have income from the projects. And also some infrastructure projects also that needed a very big amount of foreign debt.
I think it's just a snowball or a domino effect that these things are happening.
Snowball already.
So it's like what basically is one hot potato to the next hot potato, and it's. I mean, I understand that those were some miscalculations, and a lot of the pandemic definitely shattered a lot of predictions that was initially perhaps supposed to be achieved. But what are the initial signs, though, as an analyst, other than the inability to actually, meet obligations, mostly external? What are the initial signs that a country will send shockwaves? That shockwaves will be sent into their, economic system that will cause this default?
Firstly, perhaps the budget deficit, continuous budget deficit. So their budget deficit actually not like Indonesia. Indonesia we have kind of financial law that limit the budget deficit at 3%. Yeah, but because of the pandemic, we extended to 2023 for having more than 3% of GDP. But in Sri Lanka, they don't have kind of regulations. Yeah, so their budget deficit increased from 9% in 2019 to 12%, and
Oh.
also in terms of debt to GDP ratio is so very big. Right now, perhaps more than 100%. Like in Indonesia, we have a limit. We have a limit of 60% of GDP, but they don't have kind of law, in Sri Lanka. Other signs also perhaps continuous currency depreciation.
Okay.
And they have also really high inflation rate. Yeah, actually right now above 50% already.
Yep.
And in terms of forex reserve, also very low right now, maybe only around 1 billion compared to their foreign debt exposure. Right
Yeah.
now, maybe around 10 billion already. So I think it's a kind of classic, what we call it, living beyond their means.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about that on a personal basis, I mean, there
It's-
is things you can do.
Yes.
You can kind of, cut off the flow and then see what you could do to kind of recuperate from that. But what happens when it's in an entire country? I mean, what actually happens when a country does go into default or go bankrupt? I mean, you mentioned that they've had plenty of bailouts from the IMF as well, but what can the government or what should a government do in order to mitigate fallout and take control of a situation before it gets this far?
yeah, of course, the country perhaps we have to prioritize economics compared to the politics. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
what happened in in Sri Lanka. Basically, they try to fulfill their campaign promises without seeing what happened in their balance sheet. Yeah. So that's the kind that we have to learn from this bankruptcy. And of course, even in multilateral or big institutions like IMF, they cannot give more and more bailout, of course.
Yeah.
Right now, they need a kind of structural reform also being done by the Sri Lanka governments. Yeah. So previously, perhaps more promises, but no change in terms of governance and institutions. And they keep defaulting their sovereign debts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's harder for a country to fund its deficits, basically.
So this is very interesting because there's certain things that a government should do to make sure that economic stability or keep your balance sheet in check, right? As you mentioned before, separate politics and economics. But what, in your opinion, are the things that we as citizens can do to help mitigate such a situation, or are we solely dependent on the policies of the government?
Yeah, of course, in terms of individual, we can increase our productivity, of course. Yeah, we need receipts from the export earnings, for example, and we should diversify. Like in some countries, and in Indonesia also, we too depends on the commodities exports. Yeah, for example.
Okay.
So mostly we export commodities, and I think not much value added from these commodities.
Yeah.
So we need to increase the value added of the commodities that we export. So I think diversification in terms of the products and also in terms of the countries, I think is very, very good for a country. And also in terms of individual, I think of course we need to increase the productivity and also I think in terms of the tax, taxation, I think is very important for a country and also for the citizen to fulfill their obligation to pay the tax.
Okay, but David, obviously this situation in Sri Lanka serves as a stark reminder for us as to what can happen to a country when it doesn't look far enough into the future
Yes.
in order to kind of plan ahead properly. I've got a couple of two-part question here. In your opinion, what happens from now going forward in Sri Lanka? Because we do know from even 2 days ago on July the 10th, they had officially run out of reserves when it comes to fuel and energy. Is it too late? And how do they recover even slightly from their situation right now? And looking forward, what can they do, or what can other countries do as well if they're seeing these signs of a possible default in their future as well in order to prevent it from happening?
Yeah, it's very difficult situation right now. One of the option they have to go again, again to IMF, and perhaps they can also create kind of bilateral agreement to other countries. I heard they already having agreement with India and also China, nearly $2 billion, because right now they have to import food and also energy, because
Right.
they don't have much. Energy being produced domestically, and also food they have to import it from abroad. So I think in the near term perhaps they have to change the governance also, because I heard also in terms of the uh, good corporate governance they don't do it very good. Yeah, they have to change the governance,
Yeah.
and perhaps they have to also impose some austerity fiscal policy. Yeah. So like before they cut so many taxes, perhaps they have to introduce again some taxation policies. Yeah. This is very hard for the people, of course, but they have to do it. Yeah.
Well, it is very hard because when we talk about taxes and their income and the inflation is already happening, it is hard if we have to.
It's already a tough
Yeah, it's already
right?
exacerbated. So, of course, when something like this happens, it's the people that we worry about the most. So, but what do you think can Indonesia learn from a situation like this, apart from what you've mentioned before, productivity and also diversifying?
Yeah, actually, kind of situations happened before in 1998 in Indonesia. We learned very hard from this experience before, yeah. So, of course, we have already changed the governance and the institutions also. So, we try to create a very good corporate governance in Indonesia. And also, we have a law actually. Yeah. Before the pandemic, actually, we limit our budget deficit at 3% of GDP. So, it's very good. No other countries actually in the world that impose kind of policy. Yeah. We also limit our debt at 60%, and also we try to having domestic debt rather than foreign debt. Yeah. So we have 60% or 70% local denominated or rupiah denominated debt. Yeah. Before the crisis in '97. Most of our debt are in foreign currencies. So we have to do kind of a structural reform also, yeah.
Right.
So to also to limit the budget, for example, we cut our subsidy before, but of course right now the situation's getting dire again, so we have to do some arrangements, yeah, perhaps later on.
Yeah, lessons definitely learned, and perhaps if there's a silver lining to that monetary crisis in '98, it is given us kind of a look at what could happen. And then the pandemic hit a couple of
Yes.
years ago, and then we were able to already have a better structure in place. Very ironic, though, that Pak David, that a lot of the things you mentioned are things that we could apply to our own daily lives when it comes to structuring our
That's right.
finance and our debt as well, right?
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate this more in-depth look into the dire situation that's happening in Sri Lanka. We thank you for your time. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you, bye.
That was Chief Economist at Bank Central Asia, David Sumual.